Hello all. Today what I'm going to show you is how to put together a very quick hand-built mug. Just from soft slabs, we're going to roll and stretch out slabs real quick, texture those slabs, put them together to make us a nice little mug. The kind of tools that you'll need, obviously you'll need some clay, a little cup of water, the actual tools that I like to use, metal rib, possibly a wooden undercutting tool, needle tool, and a knife. Then I like to have some templates, some that you can make, some that you can cut some cups apart from your local coffee shop or whatever. Some texture tools, I've got some lace or a wooden stamp or a rubber stamp. If you are going to use rubber stamps, what you're going to want is what I've got here, which is just a piece of foam with WD-40 on it. You could use other kind of oils, just something that is going to make it so that those rubber stamps don't stick to the clay, and then a rolling pin. Cool. So those are going to be kind of the things you need. You can kind of vary off of those different things, but that's going to be the main tools. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn this hunk of clay into a slab. To do that first, I just want to kind of compress this down. I'm just going to kind of smack it down with my hand. You can do that with a rolling pin or something else. I'm just going to kind of try to smack this down very evenly, turning it to make it a little bit lower and wider so that I can stretch this easier or roll it out easier. Secret is to just really try to keep it pretty even, not feel any rush to do this. Just take your time. Great. So now I've got this nice compressed piece of clay. I'm going to stretch it out. How I like to do that is by stretching. So I'm going to hold this clay away from me and pull down towards my hips. I have another video of this process that's a little bit more in depth than I'll do here. So if you want a more in-depth description of this, feel free to watch it that way. Or you can just use a rolling pin. I'm going to stretch it a little bit and then use a rolling pin at the very end. So start away from me, pull down towards me. It should just make that nice soft swooping sound. If you hear too loud of a sound, that probably means that you're either throwing it down or you're just throwing it too hard. And what we're going for is something that's about 3/16 of an inch thick. Great, so I've got this stretched out. If this is your first time doing it, probably won't come out super evenly, so that's what the rolling pin is for. It's just, if you get any thick or thin spots, thick spots hopefully, but you can just use the rolling pin to go through and stretch it out, smooth it down a little bit. The other thing you can do is just use the rolling pin the whole way through. Just make sure after you use the rolling pin a couple times that you take your slab, pick it up, and turn it over. That'll help make sure that your slab doesn't stick to whatever board that you're using. That being said, I didn't mention it before, you really do want to work on a board or a non-porous surface. So I've got a piece of drywall here. You can work on a different type of wood board, or you can work on just cardboard or newspaper. I don't want to work on this kind of table that I'm at. This is a laminate table, so the clay would definitely stick to that, so that'd be problematic. Okay, cool, so I've got my slab rolled out. What I'm next going to do is compress it with the metal rib and then start doing some texture. I'm going to bring the video in here a little bit closer so you can see that process. So now that my slab is all rolled out, I'm going to take a metal rib and just go back and forth and really smooth down the surface of this slab. In addition to doing that, I'm really compressing the clay, and that's going to help the clay stay the shape that we want it to. So once I put a curve into this, it's going to keep that same curve. Clay is made up of little silica particles. Those are kind of like little bricks. So when they aren't compressed, they're like bricks in like a pile. And there's extra space between those bricks. So what can happen is that if there's extra space like between one and the other, then as they shrink, as the clay dries, the spaces between them are going to shrink. And so if there's more space in one area than other spaces, that's going to shrink at a different rate. It's going to kind of cause it to warp a little bit. So if we just go through and really compress it, like with this kind of tool, it just makes all those spaces a little bit more even, a little stronger, all of that. All right, so this is all compressed out. And then what I like to do is grab one of my templates here. So I'm just going to use this one. You can kind of see it's 11 by 5 by 4.5. It's going to make kind of a shorter, wider cup. And then I like to first just trace this out with like a needle tool. Don't need to be perfect right here because we're just tracing. I'm not cutting all the way through. The reason being that when I texture this, it may cause this slab to warp all over the place. And so I want to just texture it first and then cut it out afterwards. So then I can use any of these texture things that I had. That's what all this space is around the outside for. So I can kind of try out all the different textures that I have. Like I said, when you use a rubber stamp, you want to first put it in some sort of oil or foam. So I just would put it in there so that it isn't going to stick to the clay. And with stamps, you kind of want to push them in and then kind of rock them back and forth and up and down. That'll make a good texture. With this one though, I think I'm just going to just use this lace all over. So I'm going to set that down there, kind of decide where I want it to go, and we'll just center it. I can take my rolling pin, really roll that lace in everywhere. Cool. So I do that, then I can peel this off to reveal that kind of fun texture. I'll put my template back on there, take my knife, and cut it out. So then what I need to start doing is thinking about what side is going to be the top and what side is going to be the bottom. I probably will just do this right side up. That makes life easier. Take all these little pieces of clay. What's easiest, if you want to make sure they don't dry too much, just kind of ball them up into a little ball and set them off to the side. That'll help keep them drier or keep them a little wetter longer. Carefully peel this up. It's also easier if you, so this slab hasn't moved since we put the textures in. So it's a little bit easier if you, before you cut this out, to just pick up your whole slab. First, move it to a spot on your board that isn't wet, and then cut it out, because then you can kind of see here my slab stretched a lot in that area because I had to peel it up, but that's okay. I'll just do that. Okay, so now what we want to do, decide what side the top is. That's going to be the side, and I just want to soften that a little bit. One way to do that, just get a tiny, tiny little bit of water on your finger. You're just going to very gently kind of rub back and forth. I don't want to use a lot of water. A lot of water can cause some problems. I'm just trying to soften that edge just a little bit. I'll flip it over. On the inside here, when we make mugs, you want the outside to be straight and the inside to have kind of like an angle in. So I'm just going to push a little bit harder. I can go through and kind of like just push that edge down a little bit to get that little bit of an angle. I can go through with a knife and cut that there too. Or you can just push a little bit harder. But I just want that little bit of an angle on the inside. And that's that. Great. So that's my top edge being kind of finished. And then what I want to do here now is bevel these two edges. So right now, if I were to put this clay together, they'd come together, but it would be kind of open. So we want them to be angled so they come together a little bit better. So I'm going to take my knife, hold it like a 45-degree angle, just however I would hold a pencil. Cut straight down at that angle on one side. Take those little bits of clay away. Keeping that tool at exactly the same angle, so I held it like this. I'm going to bring it over here and cut over here. Just like that. So then you can see one of the cuts. You can see that angle, and then on this side you can't. That way when we put them together, they'll come together. And then what I want to do is really scratch and score these pieces up. So it's a slipping and scoring process. So we're going to scratch it all up with our needle tool, add some water, make it really wet, and then scratch again. That making it wet is going to make it kind of act like glue and hold together, and then the scratch is this extra surface area. So I'm going to take my little needle tool and really get after and scratch up that surface, right? And you want it really, really messy. Some people make like X's like this when they're scratching it. That doesn't do anything. Not helpful at all to us. We really want to mess up that surface. So then I'll take a little bit of water, really rub it in so you can't see that texture too much anymore, and then scratch again. What we're really looking for, and you can kind of see here, is that that top of that clay is super gooey and that you don't really see any flat sections at all. I'm going to flip this slab over. And so whenever you're adding clay to clay, so these two pieces of clay are going to go together, you want to do this scratch, water, scratch, slipping and scoring process. That's what's going to hold the clay together. So if you ever add any pieces, that's what you're going to do there. All right, so now that we've got both those sides scratched, we're going to put them together. So I like to just lift this up, kind of put it in sort of a U shape there, so it will almost hold its own shape. Then slowly work those two edges together. Do it here so you can kind of see it a little bit better. And what you want to do is just, you don't want to put them together exactly together. You want to just overlap them a little bit more. Push those in. Then I really like to work this slab to make it a little bit more round everywhere. All right, and then you've got some options as far as this edge goes. You can just blend it totally left and right to really make sure that it's blended and that it's together and that it's smooth. I kind of like to highlight that seam, so I just go in with a tool, kind of compress the inside there, and just soften that with my finger a little bit. Push that in. All right, so that's going to be how the mug kind of comes together. Super easy. Then we need to add a bottom to it. So I'm going to take a little piece of clay off over here. If you want to, you can texture the bottom. So let's just do that. Put our lace down. Texture that everywhere. Great. And then I'll flip that over because I want that on the bottom, not on the inside. Put my mug on here. And then trace this out all the way around. I make a little mark right where the seam is. And then if I can't see the seam well, I'll make a mark there too. So that will help me line it up. And then I carry that mark to the inside because this mark will go away just now because we're going to cut this section out here. So I cut it out. I like to cut in at a little bit of an angle. Gives that like a little bit of negative space underneath your cup, which kind of lifts it up, makes it look a little bit lighter. Okay, great. So now I've got that. And we need to, again, slip and score this all together so that everything is going to stay together here. Because we'd spent this time kind of smoothing out this rim, I don't want to put that down flat on a hard surface because that'll mess it up. So I'm going to put it down on some clay. And if you want to at this point, you can get in there with like a wooden tool or your finger to really smooth out that seam on the inside too. Okay. Then we're going to just go through and really slip and score these two edges that are going to attach the bottom to your mug. This part's super important, obviously, because this is what's going to make it so your mug holds things. This isn't done well, you're going to have holes in the bottom of your mug. It's not going to be super effective at being a mug. So you want to make sure that this is really slip and scored well. You can overdo it a little bit because you can always go back in once this is all together and smooth out any of the extra scratches. I know it takes a little bit to make sure that you slip and score well, but it's a really important part. If you don't do it well enough, then things are just going to come apart and just going to lose your pieces, so it's not worth it. Okay, so now I've got this little line. This is where my seam is. I'm going to line those up, put this on here. Another little trick about putting these together after you scratch and score them is if you put them there and then you kind of wiggle it a little bit, you'll feel that it kind of slides and then it catches. Once it catches, then you know it's kind of together. So I'm going to do that all over, and then I like to tap this down around everywhere. And I'm just going to go through and really kind of just soften where those two edges meet. You can use a rolling pin to kind of roll it. If you want to go back and you can add a little bit of extra texture on those edges, that's cool. You can see I'm not adding lots of water. That although it looks like it helps, sometimes just causes other problems. And then I like to make sure, and you can kind of see it here, that this is already domed in a little bit. I like that to dome in a little bit. It helps the mug sit more flat, actually, because it'll make it like a little foot. Okay, cool. So now we've got our little mug together. The only thing that we're missing is a handle. So I like to have the handle right on the seam, kind of hides the seam a little bit. And there's a bunch of different ways to do handles. I'm going to show you one. Here, it's making a handle out of slabs. So I can just take what I've got here, make this a little bit more. Great, so I've already got this textured. So I'm going to cut a line down to give me a straight edge on one side, and then I'm going to come over here, I'm going to do a little bit wider, straight edge on that side. So I've got this kind of long carrot shape. Again, I want to smooth out the edges a little bit. This is longer than we need, so I'll cut that off. Like that. And then I like to hold it upside down. Put this flat side, bigger side down first, and then let this other side kind of fall. And that'll give you a nice little handle shape just like that. If it sags a little bit, that's okay. You can lift this up as it dries, or once it's vertical on your mug, it'll hold its shape a little bit better. This slab was also pretty thin, so if you have a slab that's thin, you can always roll out another one to make another type of handle, or to make another handle. It's a little bit thicker. Another way is to just, you can make a coil handle. So just going to take a piece of clay, kind of squish it into hot dog shape, and I'm going to roll it out. So you can kind of see when I roll clay, I'm going from my fingertips all the way to the heel of my hand. Those many rotations that clay does is what's going to help keep it round. Again, so this is going to be way bigger than we need. We'll get rid of clay. Cool. So then we've got this little coil rolled out. If I want to texture it, I can. So I can put it in here. I even like to, what I like to do sometimes, just take this and kind of throw it down on one side there to flatten it out just a little bit. Gives me a kind of a nice texture there too. Take it on the other side, throw it down that way. So now I've got this texture on either side. A little different. And then again, I like to put that bigger side down and fold this over. So that's way bigger than a handle than we need. So I'm going to take this, cut this at a little bit of an angle here, like that. Pull this down, so that's going to be more of my handle shape. Let's see, that's even probably a little big for what we've got going. Take it, put it where I want it to go on my mug there. Trace out where that handle is. And then I'm gonna scratch, water, scratch, slip and score where it's going on my mug. And the handle itself. And so this is the same if you wanted to add anything else. So like if you wanted to cut out things or use cookie cutters to cut out different shapes of things and attach them to your mug, that's great. You can do that now. Now is a great chance to do that. So then I'm going to put my handle on here. Just like before, kind of do that wiggle, wiggle, grab. I may need to support on the inside a little bit. Do that. If you've scratched and scored well enough, you don't need to blend at all. Push all that together. You can do some decorative things too at this point if you want. A lot of people like to add little things at the top. A little thumb spot. And I can go through, like I said, there's maybe some extra scratches on the inside that didn't get cleaned up. So you can clean those up with a little tool at this point. Put your name on it. That's always a good thing. Right on the bottom. But that's it. Quick little mug demo. You could do all kinds of different things. Hopefully from here you can kind of tell, like, this is super easy, just a cylinder, but you can do all kinds of different shapes, sizes, all that sort of thing to make a fancier little mug. But as far as the basic one goes, that's it.